Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim One-Up. Well, I moved. I worked 6 days a week the last 2 weeks, and I mommed some twins, and I'm exhausted. Hence why I didn't get this episode up last week, and I apologize for that, especially to Jim, because I thought I would, and I just am exhausted. So I'm glad I'm getting it up this week, even though I'm still exhausted. This show is brutal, man. I mean, on top of moving, this show is just brutal. We have 4 location days this week. I have a law office of 15 rooms, a Upper East Side apartment, a dated lawyer's office, a day spa, and then, a 65 cubicle Newsweek bullpen as the cherry on top. I really have to thank my lead man, Patrick Alban, and my buyers, Ashley Rice and Jennifer Ho and Haley Contestable. They're amazing. My coordinator, my buyers, my crew, my swing crew pulled off this Newsweek, and I can't wait for you to see it. You're going to shit. It really turned out well. I'm super impressed with them. But I think I'm at a point in the show where you think you're going to break. And I know when you're on a hard show, you go through this, and it's rough. You think like, oh, can I get out of this? Can I just leave? If you're an art director, I guess you can just leave. I've always noticed that art directors, they get a better offer, they're out of there. Not so much with decorators. Decorators, you got to stick around. But it's so much. It's every detail, and as much time as you think you have, it's not enough. It's just a brutal show. And I think we, or you, if you are in this business, work ourselves into a mental and physical exhaustion. And we put our jobs above it all. And I know that it probably affected the smoothness of my move because I'm focused on so many other things. But I don't know. I just moved with twins. I work 6 days a week, and this little podcast, which I really enjoy doing, suffered a little. It was postponed a week. So yeah. Anywho, that wasn't cry for help. I just thought I would express the tiredness that I know that we all have. Yeah. What did I watch? Nothing. I'm tired. I did finish The Lady in the Dale, and what a story, man. I don't care. You got to watch it. It's not really about the con artist sense of it, but this transsexual went through so much in her life to be who she was. Like, I just applaud her so much, and it's just a much deeper meaning than this guy who's a girl who's a con artist. It's really good, so I hope that you watch it. As a little bit of a comfort watch while I was packing up my last night, I watched Tootsie. God, I love Tootsie. I mean, everyone in it is just so good. Terry Garr. I've been stuck in that bathroom for 10 minutes. I mean, she's phenomenal. Dabney Coleman, Gina Davis, everyone, Bill Murray. But everyone in it is so good. And I just love it. I love the flow of it. I love the look of it. I love the costumes. I love everything about it. That New York apartment of Michael's is just nailed it. I guess you nailed it. I don't know what an 80s apartment in the New York looked like, but I think that was it for like struggling actors. Nailed it. The piano, the broken sink, like, ugh, I love it. The only other thing I have watched, besides Housewives, of course, is that first episode of, is it Pharaoh versus Allen, or Allen versus Pharaoh on HBO. It just started about Woody Allen sexually abusing his daughter and then, marrying his stepdaughter or whatever. Without all that, I'm not a Woody Allen fan. There, I said it. You can turn the podcast off now. I can appreciate his comedy and what he has done for film when he was good. I don't think making a film every year makes you great, but I definitely think he abused his daughter. I'll say that. And it's sad. It's a sad documentary, and I'm sure it's going to get worse. But it's good. It's on HBO if anybody wants to catch that. That's all I've watched. I haven't watched anything else. So yeah. On this episode, I speak with production designer Jim Bissell. It has been a goal of mine to speak with Jim Bissell since I started this podcast because he was on my wish list from the beginning. Selfishly, I want to interview people who inspire me, and I believe who inspire you in the world of cinema and TV. Jim Bissell has so many films that I cherish that, of course, I totally dorked out in this interview. So get ready for that. He has a fascinating origin story, man. It just put him in the sights of like Steven Spielberg so early on, and because he's so good. He has a background in theater design. One of his first films was E.T. We talk about comparing spaceship design from E.T. to his latest Midnight Sky. He basically works for JPL now because he can design like a spaceship. It's incredible. He tells about some Easter eggs from his design in Rocketeer that were from E.T. That was really interesting. The magic of trashing the house and Harry and the Hendersons. He won an Emmy in 1980 for his work in Palmerstown, U.S.A., followed by a BAFTA nomination for production design on E.T. He has an Oscar nomination for Good Night and Good Luck. He has 3 ADG nominations. He has the ADG Lifetime Achievement Award in 2015, which he's still going pretty strong. So I don't know why they already gave it to him, but what I just described is only episode 1 of this. I'm going to give you 2 episodes of Jim because it's that good. And his stories are so good. His memory is unbelievable. The second episode, we talk about the Twilight movie. We talk about Jumanji 300 and the CGI aspect of design. He worked with George Clooney 6 times on Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, Good Night and Good Luck, The Spiderwick Chronicle. Oh, that wasn't George. Sorry. He also did The Spiderwick Chronicles. He designed a $5 million garage for Rogue Nation for Mission Impossible. His designs are amazing, and you've seen them. His work is incredible. I have listened to this interview at least 5 times since we spoke because I am entranced with his language of describing his process and his experiences of his career. He is simply enchanting. I don't know. I wish I had another hour with him. So I hope you enjoy.
You with a million questions.
No, it's fun. This is a good time for it,
Yeah. I know I was super lucky during the pandemic of like emailing people and being like, I know you're not doing anything. Like, I know you got some time. So it was good. It's amazing. I absolutely just love hearing, especially how people got into the business and or like what keeps them in it. Because it's not the easiest thing in the world, but
No, but it's we're all part of the carnival, and it's
yeah.
there's always a lot of interesting stories.
I love that you have ET behind you. I rewatched it again last night with my two-year-olds. They watched a little piece of it, and it's just the best movie. It's just absolutely the best movie. Everything about it is so magical and makes you, I don't know, it's so great. Did you know that when you read the script, do you think? Were you like, what, this is weird?
Oh, no. I love the script, and I really love the writer. Melissa Matheson was just so fantastic to work with, and she was such a lovely spirit.
Wow.
I miss her on the planet.
Wow. Well, that's a sin. I mean, I can imagine being surrounded and knowing that it wasn't like Steven Spielberg at the time, but it was still Steven Spielberg. You must have felt
he
like
was Steven Spielberg. I mean, he'd done Close Encounters. He'd done
Jaws.
He'd done Jaws. He'd done. He'd just come off of Indiana Jones, the first one. And
oh wow, that's right.
So I mean, it wasn't like he was some unknown.
True. That's true. How did you? Now that is noted as your first production designer job. Like,
no, it wasn't.
It wasn't, right? I was like, how did he jump? I mean, obviously you art directed before, but was it like meeting with him and going over your ideas for the vision and everything that you got it? Or did you know him?
No, it's a good story. I'll start at the beginning.
Okay.
Which was, I was trained in theater design. I have a BFA in theater from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Mm. And I went to New York first to see what I could find, and I didn't know a soul there. I didn't know a soul anywhere out of North Carolina, to be honest, but we just sort of held my nose and jumped into the pool. And the first job I got was supposedly as a gopher for a little small boutique commercial company. But what they really wanted me to do is they weren't Teamster signatories, so I was scabbing Teamsters. I would go to Camera Service Center at like 2 a.m. and pick up their equipment for the next day's shoot, and then drive the truck, lock it up in front of my place, and then go out and get a couple hours sleep, and then go take the equipment to the shoot. Mm. And it was fun because I got to really learn about the equipment. I got to learn about who did what to whom. And eventually I moved on from that to location scouting and doing a lot of other stuff. But primarily I moved forward in production. I didn't get any jobs in design. And I started working as a location manager and then a production manager.
I saw that.
Documentaries.
I saw that and you were ADing on a couple of things, and you've written, and you've got a lot.
I didn't do that much ADing. I did it on some small shoots, but I didn't do ADing. I did. I later on progressed to doing a lot of second unit directing. But initially, what happened was after a couple of years in New York, one of the people that I knew moved out to California, and he got a job on a Fox film called Not Fade Away, which was sort of the Buddy Holly story. And he asked me to come down to Mississippi because he knew I was from the South and be the location manager. And I did, and I met the art director on the show. At that point, they were very, this was in 95, they were very parsimonious about giving out production design credits. And so despite the fact that he was the head of department, he was still called the art director.
Right.
And that's a guy named Jim Spencer. I don't know if you know him.
Oh yeah, I know his name.
Yeah, and Jim and I really hit it off well. We were both gamblers.
Hey, all right.
And so we take our per diem money and just and play poker, play backgammon, we were just ridiculous. And then we also had a lot of fun in the Jackson, Mississippi area, and I worked really well with him as a location manager, because I would propose locations, and I'd give him sketches on how the layout was and how it worked, and eventually the
He was
director,
like,
Jerry
"You're doing my
Friedkin,
job."
What's that?
He's like, "Oh, you're doing my job."
Oh no, I mean, I didn't have any idea who did what to whom.
Oh.
I just figured, well, this is, he wants a location, I can show him how it works, and later on I worked with him as an art director on this 4-hour, it was called an NBC Big Event. It was sort of a mini series, but it was on the life of Dr. Martin Luther King.
King, right? King.
And I did that in Macon, Georgia. But anyway, I met him. We got along really well, and Fox decided that the movie itself was too political. It wasn't the one with Gary Busey, which was the one that was eventually made about the Buddy Holly story. This one actually had Gary Busey in it, but he played J.I. Allison, who was the drummer for the Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Wow. And this story was about the fact that what's his name, Friedman, the impresario who first heard Buddy Holly's test recordings, he booked them sight unseen, thinking they were black. This is a true story, and booked them on these tours of the South. Well, they were just good old Texas boys, a little bigoted, and so they found them. They came to New York thinking they'd broken into the big time, and they were booked with all these black R&B artists doing this tour of the South. And the whole time they're touring the South with these black R&B artists, their song, Not Fade Away, was taking off in the charts, and they were getting really famous. So they were drawing all these white crowds as well, and there was all the separation of. Anyway, it was
that's probably a great
political
story. Like
it's a great story.
Close your eyes and just listen and enjoy. And who cares if you? I mean, it sounds like a great story. I had no idea.
It's a really good story.
I've only ever seen the Buddy. I've only ever seen the Buddy Holly. Yeah.
Which is a little sugar coated, but anyway, Fox pulled the plug on it 3 weeks into shooting, and before I left, Jim said, "Well, I tell you what, why don't you come out to Hollywood and I'll hire you. I'll work with you as
come on out to Hollywood. They're giving it away."
I went back to New York. I was newly married at the time, and I got a car and drove out to Hollywood just to sort of test the waters and see what it was like. And I slept on Jim's living room floor. And I decided that's where I should be, because New York was really tough. I didn't know anybody there, and getting into this theater scene, I was looking to design for theater, and that would have been almost impossible for me to get in. I wasn't that talented. It's just, I didn't come in with any kind of credentials, and I realized without a Harvard degree, or at least something out of New York.
In New York,
I just didn't know anybody, and I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So I decided to come out to Los Angeles, and I did a lot of stuff. I worked as a production manager. I did Kentucky Fried Movie as a production manager. I did some good old boy drive-in movies as sort of the art department. I was props, set deck, and painter.
Right.
Sitting there on these $150,000 movies that got shown in the southern.
Doing everything.
driveway.
You just do everything.
You just do it
There's no lines of what you can and cannot do. You just get it done.
And eventually migrated into doing some episodic work. I did this thing called 240 Robert, which was Jim had designed the pilot, and then he didn't want to do the series, and so I took over the series. And I started working in episodic TV, and also doing.
We had TV movies,
continued
right?
doing sort of real low budget features.
Wow.
But it introduced me to this whole group of people. I did a lot of black movies, because at the time, the black Cheryl Kearney, I don't know if you know of.
I do.
Cheryl's a sweetheart.
She's a
wonderful.
She's a doll.
Wonderful decorator.
Mm-hmm.
And gosh, I can't remember all the other names, but when the black movies would come around and they'd offer them to the black decorators and the black art directors, they didn't want to do them. because they didn't want to get pegged as, just doing black stuff. They
Right.
were world class talents, and they wanted to do the big shows.
Right.
So they needed somebody to do it, and I came from the South. So I wound up doing Don't Look Back, the story of Satchel Paige, and then King with Jim Spencer, and then through the contacts that I'd met, people I'd met, I got hooked up with Norman Lear and Alex Haley on an episodic thing called Palmerstown, U.S.A., and it was semi-autobiographical from Alex about him growing up in the segregated South.
Yeah, I was looking into that because I had never heard of it, but I was looking like, oh, when was this on? I had never heard of it.
Yeah, it was 78. And we only did the pilot, and we did 6 to 8 1-hour episodes, and that was it. But it's been rebroadcast occasionally. It's sweet, and
Yeah.
and I have to say it was really life-changing for me, because Alex Haley was one of the best raconteurs I'd ever met.
Right.
He could tell a story, and you would just be mesmerized. And I loved working with him.
Alex.
Anyway,
yeah.
this is, believe it or not, this is going to lead back to E.T.
No, this is what I want to hear. This is what I'm in for.
So Alex was really, really special, and so was Norman Lear, but I had much more dealings with Alex. The show required lots of principal sets, and it also meant that we had to build a little southern town, and which was great. And we built it out at the old Disney Ranch on Plaza Rita Canyon, and
yeah, they don't have many pictures of it on IMDb either.
No. Well, anyway, what happened was we had the sets at what are now called Culver City Studios. At the time, they were called Laird International. And Laird International was the old Selznick studio.
Right.
And it was rare in that there was the old Samuel Golan lot, which was in Hollywood, and then there was the old Selznick studios, which were now Culver City and part of the Sony complex. And those were the two big independent lots. There were non-signature lots. They were just sort of, you could four-wall it. You could come in, just rent the stages, and shoot whatever you wanted to. You didn't have to be a union signator. We had the 3 largest stages for Palmerstown, and that's where we had this grocery store and the protagonists and sets, and they were nice sets. Well, Stevan Speilberg had come back from shooting Raiders of the Lost Ark in Tunisia, and he had one more picture to do in a 3-picture deal he had with Universal, and there was an impending DGA strike. So his strategy was to possibly get stage space at an independent lot and do it as a negative pickup. So that he could sign a sweetheart deal if the DGA went on strike, and then keep production going.
Yeah,
keep going.
Smart.
So he went down to look at all these stages, and they took him for a tour of the 3 largest stages at Laird International Studios, and there were my sets. And he liked the sets, and he was touring it with the guy that he hoped would shoot the movie, a guy named DP named Alan Davio. Mm-hmm. And Alan said, yeah, these are nice sets, and there's even room to light them. Because, remember, as a theater designer, I lighted as well.
Right.
So I got added to the list of people to interview.
That's awesome. And it's like your whole portfolio was in front of them. You didn't even have to, show them anything.
Yeah. And also, Steven, at that point, had George Lucas lectured him and taught him how to make movies inexpensively on Raiders. He taught him how to storyboard, taught him how to plan ahead, and Steven was really very keen to do a really cheap movie that was good. And he figured, why not let's hire this guy? Or at least at that point, it was let's consider this guy because I was TV. They could pay me scale.
Right.
And I made less than the still photographer on the set on that.
Oh my God. Isn't that awful?
So anyway, it's not awful. I mean, at that point, I would do anything to work with on a Steven Spielberg movie.
True.
So they went through delays, they went through this, they went through that, but I just hung in there. I just kept turning work down, and eventually he hired me.
Well, I mean, one thing I noticed that I hadn't before is the lighting in the film, and I think just watching it more with a decorator eye, just how the sources are really the only things lit in the room. Like even when they're in the kitchen and you have that like huge light there, the puddles of light in the room and everything, or how E.T. sort of kept in darkness a lot of the film, and not until that little probably like second act when they're comfortable with them and it's more comedy-ish, do you get to see E.T. You don't really get to see him a lot in the first, the first act of the movie.
And except for Mom's face, you don't see any adult faces until
the
very end, when you reveal that Peter Coyote is who he is.
It's just keys. There's keys dangling.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's all very short. That's the whole thing about dramatic design is, I'm used to very, very sourcey, very specific partial imagery, and you do that through light more than anything else.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can do it through geography, and volumes, but most of the time you do it with light. So, light is is an extraordinarily important component of design.
And collaborating with it, like you can design for that, but then it might not be shot that way, which is.
Yeah, Alan became a very close friend. As a matter of fact, starting with E.T., he and I and the location manager on the show, Dick Vane, who went on to become a producer. I got him his first job as a producer, as a matter of fact.
Oh, he owes you.
And we used to have lunch every Christmas Eve together.
Oh, that's sweet.
And Alan died this year of COVID.
Oh man.
That's very sad.
Oh my gosh, that is.
Well, last year, not this year.
So sad. And you worked with them again? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, with
you did
Alan and I did Falcon and the Snowman together. We did Harry and the Hendersons together.
And Always?
And Always was Mikhail Solomon.
Oh,
He's also a really good DP.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I have really, really good, close relationships with the DP. So only rarely that I run into, the old-fashioned assholes.
Yeah. Afraid of white.
They're the ones that say, don't tell me where to put the camera, art boy.
Yeah, and then
I'll figure it out with the director. They're nuisances. They're just.
Don't stop moving my scenery. It's much easier to move your camera.
Oh God! I worked with Andrei Bartoliak one time, and we built this house for Danny DeVito on Twins, and they did the setup with Ivan Reitman, and they figured out what the first move of the next day was. So we all left, and I came back just to check on the set, and I was gobsmacked. They had basically taken a chainsaw and gone a little off camera right, a little off camera left, and they cleared everything else out except what was in the shot.
What?
And it was filled with lights. And the gaffer saw my reaction. He said, "Oh, you haven't read Andrei's book, Cooking with Light." He says, "Don't you know that Andrei Bartoliak doesn't use a light meter? He uses a thermometer."
Oh my God. It's the sun. I like to say it's the sun. The sun's in the room. You get so hot. It's the sun is here.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, he's a really good DP, but he was not a good collaborator, and he was very arrogant.
When you have that relationship with a DP, and does it help to say yes to the next project? Because then your stuff's gonna look good, at least. You're.
No, I like working with similar people, especially when we have similar aesthetics, and we work out a style of working together. Yeah. I think I've done 5 or 6 movies with Robert Elswit. I just worked with Martin Rue, who I really enjoyed working with. I'll work with him again in a heartbeat. And Phaeton Papamichael, he's fantastic. And I really enjoy the collaboration. It's extremely satisfying when I can talk with DP about what the intent is and what the most efficient way to get it.
Yeah.
you're always designing spaces and volumes, not only for what they're going to look like, but also for how you move the camera around it.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the visual language of film.
I think I'm actually, I mean, I've worked with some really good DPs, but I'm on this drama now, and it's being shot like a 70s sort of noir, very dark, very slight light in the room that's a practical, and it's really been a great working experience with the DP I'm with. Just the collaboration of like the lampshades and like, well, how dim can we get this, and like, well, this scene we really want just like a tinge over here, and it's very collaborative in a way that I'm not used to, but I really love, because the decoration is really being shot and really being used as part of the scene and the story in this particular project. So I'm all about like lighting and like I'm all about it. Right now. Yeah. I'm really enjoying it.
You know, when I teach production design, that's one of the things that I encourage everybody who has aspirations is get a camera out.
Yeah.
Really understand light and understand the importance of light, not only in terms of the way that it lights the environment, but in the way that it lights the actors and the actors' faces. Yeah. You've got to establish in a very presupposing way those light sources that later will give you the images that you want that'll forward the story. And I mean, when I work with a decorator, it's the same thing. I know where the light sources need to be, and I know what kind of light sources they need to be, whether they're hard or windows or stratified light. That's something that I just don't leave to chance. It's got to be there inherently. And I like doing lighting studies, especially in 3D, which I share with the DP and say, well, this is how I'm seeing it lit. But, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And I'd say for the past 10 years, especially, I've been working mostly with SketchUp or Blender, and using V-Ray. And these are really, really great tools to experiment with, that way you don't have to sit there and have full-scale models and move big lights around,
There's also, too, when, it's scripted, like, early morning, and you start playing with light or scenery and time of day, I mean, things change. Things can change to enhance the scenes also, and so doing those models of what time of day it will be or whatnot is, like, super helpful. At least, like, lighting of like, I'm sure with the DP coming through, like the shears and how's this gonna shaft in, or we don't want shears, we want blinds, all that. So it's
when Alan and I worked on ET together, it was a fairly low budget film. It was 10.5 million, and that was one of the ways of bringing really interesting textures. Everything that was lit had texture to it, and you saw that in the backyard shed with the lattice work and the single source inside that exploded out with light.
Yeah.
And then inside, when the security forces came to invade the house, you saw the open casement draperies that had the same kind of light, and also in Elliot's room, all Venetian blinds. They were the small mini levelers. And you pointed out.
I love those
you asked
blinds.
me about the multicolored thing. That was my idea.
Oh, dude, I begged my mom. I begged her at some time, like, I want those blinds. I want those, like, rainbow blinds. And I never had them. And then every time I watch a movie, I'm like, I wish I had those blinds. I love them.
We had to have them custom made. I mean, Jackie Carr had them made.
Yeah.
And she was a great decorator. I don't even know if she's working anymore.
I don't think so.
And she's retired.
Yeah, I believe she is. But watching it again, it's just. I also wanted to know: did you shoot that in Santa Clarita? Where did you shoot that?
You mean the exterior location of the house?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's in Sunland.
It's in Sunland.
Yeah, and then there's an interesting story that goes with that too. Okay, so I get hired on ET. And Kathy Kennedy is her first job as a producer. She's been Steven's assistant up until this point. And she said, "Well, Steven's already picked a house, and he wants and then she handed me Ralph McQuarrie's painting of the spaceship.
Oh, yeah.
And Ralph McQuarrie's a brilliant artist.
Yeah, phenomenal.
And Steven had said, I want it like a Christmas tree one.
It does look like that.
Bulb, and it looked like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So, the more we went over the action, anyway. So I went out, he was actually directing Poltergeist at that point, There was always a controversy. You're too young to know about this, but Toby Hooper was the director of Record, but Steven directed it.
Oh.
And he was out in Simi Valley doing it, and the house that he picked for E.T. was out in Simi Valley. So I went and looked at it, and it was really a bad taste. It was this, Tudor, sort of this half timber kind of faux thing that was right up against a hill. There was no depth to it. And I called Kathy up because I wasn't talking to Steven then. He was directing, and I said, "Look, with all due respect, I understand why he picked that. It looks just like the Poltergeist house, and that's what he's working on right now. But I really think what we want is an ordinary looking house, but we want the ordinary on the edge of the extraordinary. We have to be on the border of magic." And she said, "I'll talk with Steven." And then she came back and he said, "You have a week." Now I'm like, oh boy. And I didn't realize, of course, if I didn't find it in a week, if I didn't find a good one, replacement in a week, I was out of there.
Yeah.
I was canned. But anyway, the location manager was this guy, Dick Bain, and I said, "You know what? Remember, ordinary on the edge of the extraordinary. Let's look at new development that's against mountains and against, it just looks like it's on the border."
Yeah.
And so he took the north side of the valley, I took the south side of the valley. We started looking.
You're just knocking on doors?
Well, not even knocking on doors, just driving around looking for the ordinary on the edge of the extraordinary. And he was the one who found it. It was like a small street that had newer houses, 70s and 80s houses, and the rest of the neighborhood was like 40s and 50s. But he found that one house that was right there up against the mountains, and it looked like he could go out that backyard and suddenly be in this magical redwood forest.
Because they don't really say where it is. I mean,
it's amorphous.
Yeah, because then even I was like, because he points to it on the map, we are here, and he's pointing to northern sort of California, and I was like, oh, maybe he's just pointing. But location-wise, I thought it was there. I always remember thinking, isn't it the weirdest thing that those trash cans are up on this hill falling down towards them?
Yeah.
But you have to have that action. You have to know that, maybe it's just coyotes up in that hill. You have to have that up there. Yeah.
There's a fire road. All that was built anyhow. All of that stuff is built.
So the backyard is built, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look anything like the location. It's all designed specifically for the act.
Because the other thing is there's corn stalks there. It's like...
Well, you had to have a reveal of E.T.
Yeah. No. And I love, the whole forest and him in the little river, and it's like, that's not L.A., but it is. But it isn't.
That's right. It's the movie, what the movie is really all about is it documents a transition. It documents Elliot's transition from childhood magical thinking to the beginnings of adult rational thought.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And so you have to have a lot of magical thinking in there.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're with Elliot the whole way as he goes through this process. And he says goodbye to his childhood self, reminding himself that he's right here. This is he's got his inner child.
Oh, listen, I cried. I cried last night. I cried.
But he has to become an adult. He's got to come to terms with the reality of the divorced parents and all the things that adults have to start to face.
It's also to design of the spaceship and the door closing, like right on the heart, and seeing it is so tear-jerking. Wonderful.
I designed it just basically like a lens shutter, so that it could come right down onto the heart light, and it was just cardboard. I was at back of that during the closing. I was actually doing it. No, it was just levers.
Oh my gosh.
And also, when you look, I still get embarrassed looking at that gate that never quite swung out all the way. the ramp that goes
Oh
up.
yeah.
Because that's just like fencing, you know.
No, I didn't see that at all. But that spaceship to me is like, it as you said, like he wanted it like a Christmas ornament. It's so childlike. When you look at it, you're like, oh, it's so bulbous, and it's like it's not going to hurt you. It's not aggressive. It's really designed so like with children in mind, I feel like.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we made up. Melissa used to come by, and we'd always have a beer hour at 6 in the evening. We drank San Miguel beer. We'd
Nice.
make up all these backstories about ET and how they came from this they're a gardening planet. They basically dropping by to pick up specimens, and he's just this gentle little soul that does that. And she brought that to William Cotswinkle, who wrote the novelized it.
Wow.
And took all the backstory that we made up in the art department during those sort of
Oh my god, that's so
beer
great.
sessions, and put it in the novel.
Oh my god, that's so great. Now, I'm going to jump way ahead. Now, do you reference that spaceship at all when you're doing the Midnight Sky? Like, do you think about that?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about the ET spaceship was it was magical. And if you want to think of it in those terms, the Midnight Sky spaceship. Let me back up just a moment here.
Yeah.
To really give you the full story, because remember when I said Steven came back from Tunisia and was looking for a place to do ET? Well, there's another component to that story, which was that before he left, he hired this futurist named Ron Cobb, who had designed the interior of the spaceship for Close Encounters, the special edition. Really great futurist and a really interesting political cartoonist. And he hired Ron to do a movie called Night Skies, which is about aliens, and Rick Baker was going to do all the creatures, and John Sayles wrote the script.
Oh, wow.
Well, Steven came back and he looked at everything that they'd done, but he had been talking to Melissa, who was living with Harrison Ford at the time and was in Tunisia with them when they were doing Raiders, and had decided he wanted to make it as a kids movie and not a horror movie. So he broomed them all out. He got rid of them. And Columbia, the studio, was really pissed off because they'd been developing this and they really liked what they were doing. So they put the project in turnaround. And that's when Universal got E.T.
Oh, wow.
as the fulfillment of E.T.
Of his deal.
Yeah, just think what's your thing. And so, anyway, the guy that he fired, Ron, still good. He was a fantastic guy, a really, really amazing fellow. And he went off and production designed Conan the Barbarian. Well, while we were doing ET, he came back and dropped by the set to say hi to Steven. And Steven said, well, you got to go meet our production designer. So Ron came by the art department, and this was the beginning of a lifelong friendship.
Oh.
Ron and I, we did several projects together, and we were really close friends. And I bring him up because he passed away this year as well.
Oh my gosh.
Not COVID, he had a stroke. But Ron was an amazing designer, and he developed the language, basically the Hollywood language for spaceships, because he designed the Nostromo in Alien.
Oh.
And and that sort of set the template. Every movie, space movie since then looks like the Nostromo. Even when you get to what was it, Sunshine?
Oh yeah, I love Sunshine. I love that film.
That's Ron. That's a Ron Cobb
Right.
flying warehouse kind of spaceship, and even a lot of Scott Chambliss's, in Star Trek. Very, very similar kind of language, making very industrial looking.
Yeah.
And George had said to me on Midnight Sky, he really wanted it to look different. He didn't know how.
I know, that's
So
hard.
I sort of wrestled with it because, here the sort of default in Hollywood is go to a Ron Cobb-like spaceship. And Ron's designs, incidentally, very much were prescient in the sense that he designed these things in the mid-'70s, and once you got to the International Space Station, they don't look that much different. It's got that same kind of aesthetic.
Right.
So how do we get to the next level of design? Was my question to myself, and I started doing some homework into what are the major problems and how could they be addressed through design? Two major problems for deep space travel, and something that the designers right now are wrestling with. One is you got to protect human inhabitants from radiation. It's a big problem. The deep space radiation is lethal, and so you have to be able to protect it. The second is long-term space travel is really, really hard on the human body because weightlessness is really bad for you. Turns out, your heart is meant to be with gravity,
right.
And pump blood through your body. So, how do you get gravity? And that's one of the conceits of the Ron Cobb School of Spaceship Design is everybody takes a gravity pill, or there's some sort of thing that resolves the gravity problem. And there isn't anything. Einstein said there is nothing except centrifugal force that mimics
right.
Gravity. So that was the two things that now I have to work with. And where ET played into it was a little bit the SAC, the whole idea of a little mini world.
Right.
And in Lily Brooks Dalton's book, she calls it Little Earth. So I thought, well, wouldn't this be interesting? Because one of the big problems in building those big Werner von Braun kinds of rings that spin around and you have centrifugal force and you're always walking on a curved surface.
Right.
Wouldn't it be interesting? I mean, those are impossible to build because you can't get all that material up into space. And even when you look at 2001 and the Jupiter probe that you see later on in 2001, where he's doing the jog.
Right.
The radius is impossibly short to try to the radius of the circle is impossibly short. You'd never
be able to do it.
Gravity, and not only that, it's going like this, and the spaceship's moving this way. So anybody jogging there will keep bouncing up. They just go in arcs. And so they were trying to simulate in 2001 something that is possible, but they couldn't build in order to circle. To make build that circular set so that you can actually see them running around on it.
Right.
They built it as big as they could in the largest stage at Pinewood. But it's all wrong.
Right.
Well, was say, all right, you have a really long baton to get the radius out there and spin it around relatively fast. And you can mimic, and now, all right, so if that's the design principle, then you want to maximize as much as possible at the end where the centrifugal force is, the space that uses centrifugal force. Mm. And so that's why you have, it can either look like fallopian tubes, or it can look like, testicles or whatever, they have called many different things.
I mean, to me, it looked like an exploded flower. It looked very organic and very beautiful.
That comes from a design principle called topological optimization. Mm-hmm. And topological optimization is basically you use supercomputers and you feed in to the supercomputers all the information about stress points and everything else. The design principle of the ether in midnight sky is that they have developed within the next 15 years layered fabrics that protect from radiation and also are lightweight for getting up into space and a lot less expensive than a hard shield. Mm. And those fabrics basically cover and hold the gas, hold the atmosphere into the spaceship, and they have an exoskeleton that keeps them from flying off as they're spinning around. That exoskeleton is topologically optimized, and it's designed and it has that really organic look. Mm. And the exoskeleton goes up the shaft, and then it comes to a collar, and then it goes around and holds the large bags of air where the big living habitats are. And then it holds the structural pieces that do, water processing and air, atmospheric cleansing and all of that. And the other thing that they do is they address a similar problem that is a problem with creating centrifugal force. You've got this thing going around and around, and that affects navigation. If it's consistent, then you don't really have a problem. You compensate for it in the way that you sort of hurl your way through space. However, you've got people inside moving around, and the mass is constantly shifting, and so that really affects navigation. How do you deal with that? Well, I'm saying this exoskeleton has sensors on all the floors and knows exactly where everybody is and how much they weigh, and constantly shifts the floors so that it doesn't affect navigation.
Now, are you up for a job at NASA at this point from learning all this? Are you JPL? Like, where do you think you're going to go with this?
Well, I was interested. As a matter of fact, I did contact the entertainment and entertainment. The science interface. Let's see, probably have one of their emails.
I don't know.
Anyway, they tried to put me in touch with people, spacecraft design, but they just didn't get back to me quickly enough. So I did some homework, and that's how I came up with this. But after it was designed, I did run it by an astrophysicist, and he said it was a good idea. It's a good design. So
you're the next generation.
Something that looked like it could exist and look cool. Ultimately that was it.
But even how you were saying like that exoskeleton, it looks like it's inside with all that sort of webbing.
It is.
Yeah.
Because remember,
beautiful.
you have an exoskeleton that keeps the whole thing from flying off into space, and the endoskeleton supports the floors. So it's a little bit like one of those 3-tiered fruit baskets that you hang in your kitchen.
Right.
A wire one. Only you're swinging it around like this.
Right.
And it stretches out, and then you have staircases that go up and down. But those, it's the thing that's the most lightweight that can still support the weight of the floors, and that's what that's supposed to represent. And it also probably adjusts.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I wanted to do in post was to really make it feel almost like a clipper ship flying through space. Because you hear the creaking as somebody moves around.
Yeah.
The endoskeleton adjusts, and you do see the fabric, when the meteor field, when the debris field hits the spaceship, you see it hit the surface and bounce off the fabric. That's part of that design, which makes it sort of viable. Is it absorbs the shock rather than breaking it. If it was a hard surface.
It has to be, a tremendous amount of research to how this works, like you were explaining. Plus, how do humans interact with this? Plus the script, the drama of it, then the lighting. I mean, a spaceship to me is probably the thing I want to do least. I feel like that's a lot of pressure doing spaceships.
Well, there is, and and it goes back to what we were talking about with Ron's spaceship and establishing a language. I think that's why you establish that language. It's a shorthand for people to just say, well, this is the way spaceships are done in Hollywood.
There it is,
and,
spaceship.
And the audience will understand what this is. And that was the scary part of the Midnight Sky design was it made sense to me, but I didn't know how it would read. Whether people would go, well, that's bullshit,
Oh no, I think I definitely think it elevated the design to the next level. And we're there. It needed it so bad. You can't keep seeing, and as beautiful as other spaceships are designed and everything, it's the big window, and it's like it needed a test to be upgraded, and I think you've done it beautifully, and I don't know how you came up with all that, but I think it's beautiful.
I'd like to actually follow through with that design, because there's a lot of stuff that I discovered that we just didn't have time to.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
It would be nice to take that design concept to another level.
I don't think that one's getting a part 2 though. I don't think they're getting a sequel, but
it's funny. You brought up. There are a couple of other little. How to say it? when you plant things, what are those called?
Like,
Cherries.
Organics of like.
No, when you plant. People are always looking for things inside movies that are sort of references to
like Easter eggs.
Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Here's an Easter egg from Rocketeer. And it's also from E.T., but the Easter egg from Rocketeer is if you look at the back shield, that looks like the floor pattern in Rocketeer.
Oh, wow.
And the floor pattern in Rocketeer, you had asked, I forgot what your question was. Oh, yeah, we built that whole thing. We built the whole South Seas Club. That's a total invention.
Oh, in the Rocketeer.
It's not based on anything except the floor pattern in the center is based on Cedric Gibbons' design for Grand Hotel in 1932. The lobby in Grand Hotel has that floor pattern.
Oh, you're talking about the Rocketeer and in Sinclair's house?
No, I'm talking about Rocketeer and the South Seas Club.
Oh, the South Seas Club. Oh, the big giant club that they're dancing in and having. Yeah, that must have been a huge build.
And the South Sea, well, it had to be big because he had to fly around in it. He had to be sort of, as they're shooting machine guns at him, and then he goes up through the skylight.
Yeah.
So that sort of dictated how big the thing had to be.
Man.
And it had to be relatively big, but then we took advantage of it to do those really romantic scenes with Neville Sinclair, and she's dancing and the big shell coming up.
Yeah.
I loved that. That was cool.
And another little thing in there, I noticed the woman who's singing that is Jan from The Office.
How do you like that?
I didn't know that. But yeah.
I can't remember. She has a relationship with Joe. I wish I could remember exactly what it is. And I forgot.
I was like, is that Jan? And then I looked her up, and it was. The Rocketeer, when I guess it was like 1990 or 89, The Rocketeer was out, I think, or 93.
We shot it in 90. And
90. So I think
I think it came out in
91. So at that time, my family went to Disney World like almost every other year. And their big thing that year was like The Rocketeer. And so they were just promoting it. And I remember seeing it in the movie theater and being like, this is like the coolest movie of this regular guy getting to be this little superhero. But to me, also seeing the old Hollywood, but not in an old movie. Like it, but, and for not kids, but like for a younger audience. It was just like that dog and the cafe, and then I don't know. It just made it so much more like attractive to come to Hollywood for me. Of like, I just loved seeing the old Hollywood. It must have been so much fun to like design that.
Oh, it was a ball. I think it's still one of my favorite movies that I've worked on.
It's really sweet.
And whenever I can, we get it shown at some film festival when I drag Joe along with me.
You should. It's awesome.
It's fun for us to talk about it. He says he could probably redo it and cut about 10 minutes out of it. Maybe a better movie, but I love it. I watched it with my daughter. She's the one who started watching it. And I walked by and went, "You're watching The Rocketeer? What's going on here?" I sat down and I got pulled right in.
Alan Arkin is so good in it.
He's fantastic. He's really good. He's really funny.
And then all of a sudden, it's like a Nazi thing, and you're like, oh, wow, we're learning lessons here.
His accent suddenly comes out. He suddenly starts speaking with a German accent.
No, that's awesome. I also rewatched Harry and the Hendersons, which I've seen probably 1,000,000 times. I mean, I could probably ask you really dumb questions about Harry and the Hendersons because I just want to know everything I can about it. But as with E.T. and this, you're working with, like, I mean, that wasn't really a puppet, but you have elements of these creatures that you have to work into the design. Like, he destroyed that whole house.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun. Especially the kitchen floor when he's down the basement.
Yeah, the kitchen floor is fantastic.
That when he does the thing with the door.
Yeah, with the door.
That was built in, and it was basically a hydraulic piston that sucks up, and it's a balsa wood lintel and balsa wood molding. So it just pulls it up.
So as
he's doing it.
That's awesome.
And it cracked beautifully. The other problem was, you had John Lithgow, who bears a striking similarity to me in terms of lighting, because he's small, or he's hair challenged, and he's a very, very tall man and very, very light. And then we had this extraordinarily tall, dark creature whose eyes are recessed.
Yeah.
And nothing but light absorbent material all around him. How do you light the two of them in one shot? Needed a lot of control, and that's why you'll see that's one of the reasons we picked the craftsman style house, was so that when we're in, and you'll notice this on all of the ceilings, we use coffered ceilings, so you can lift the panels out and get lights in there. Constantly, you can really light each scene. And Alan Davia lit that one. He was that was a real challenge for him. Incidentally, too, you brought up time of day.
Yeah.
The hardest things, and the director, Bill Deere, was not particularly appreciative of how brilliant Alan was. And he used to hate the fact that when Harry first goes in the house, it's dark outside. And by the time the neighbor knocks on the front door,
it's the morning.
It's dawn. And you're the whole way through that scene, you're gradually increasing the amount of light inside the house. And that was really, really tough for continuity. And Alan did a brilliant job. I think you felt you weren't disturbed by it at all. By the time you open the door outside, you're shooting right into a backing there.
And because you're destroying the house and it's becoming dawn at the same time. So I can't imagine the resets. Whenever anything's like furniture destroyed, I'm like, oh God, how many do I have to buy?
Yeah, you really got to plan those things out. It's a military maneuver.
Yeah.
And even remembering that this was 1986, they had no digital. There's no digital anything.
No.
When he climbs up the ladder to
Yeah.
the second story, and he takes the rifle and he's about to shoot Harry, and Harry's looking at the big stone going, "We did this."
Yeah.
And you do the reverse on John. That's right up against the translate. That's a translate of Seattle, and it's all in camera.
Oh my gosh, it's I wasn't even looking at the translate. I was looking at John Lithgow's eyes. I couldn't
John
take
Lithgow,
my eyes
he's
off.
brilliant.
I love it. I love John
Yeah,
Lithgow.
he's such a brilliant actor.
When you did that here and then did exteriors up in the Northwest?
Well, remember, all those nighttime exteriors are on stage. That was an interior-exterior set, very much like the ET set.
Wait a minute.
The whole backyard was built on stage at Universal.
But not when they're running through the forest, right?
Oddly enough, later on, when it's cold,
Yeah. With all the snow.
they had an early spring in
Of course they
in
did.
Seattle, and all the snow melted.
Of course they did.
Yeah, and we didn't know what to do, and then finally I said, you know what? Let's call the Ice Capades. We called the Ice Capades, and they had portable ice rinks that we rented, and we put them on stage at Universal, and we brought the trees in, and we put our own snow in, and that's how we got all the stuff for making the footprints.
No way. Wow, you are really smart. I would have never thought to call the Ice Capades. That's awesome. Were you kind of like, I don't want to do another movie with a puppet or like an animal again? Like, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I really enjoyed it. I did. I eventually wound up doing Cats and Dogs, which was pretty much
that's every
version of Harry and the Hendersons.
Every animal.
I am telling you, you are going to re-listen to this interview. You are going to go back and listen to these stories again. So many inside design tips and production stories. I mean, wow, the guy's memory. How about it? I am so off my game in this interview. I actually found out about a family member having COVID about 10 minutes before this, and so my mind was sort of racing the whole interview, and I apologized to Jim afterwards and told him why I was just sort of distracted. So sorry about that. It's kind of more evident in episode 2. Sorry. But I'm so thankful that he gave me his time. And today, when you're listening to this. I'm recording it Wednesday night, but Thursday morning, ADG nominations are announced. And I really hope they acknowledge his work in Midnight Sky. And Oscar voting starts next week. So, yeah, there's that. I hope his work is considered there too. So I cut this interview into 2 parts, which means next week, part 2, Jim Bissell. Also because you fatigue at about an hour. I know you. I can see your listening habits of this podcast, and I don't really want you to miss any of this conversation, so that's why I'm giving you 2 parts. So next week, as I said, Jim talks about The Twilight Zone, his feelings about working with CGI in Jumanji and 300, working with George Clooney on films like Good Night and Good Luck and Confessions of a Dangerous Mind and Leatherheads and again Midnight Sky, his beautiful work in the Spiderwick Chronicles with decorator Jan Pascal, and he does describe a $5 million build of a garage for Rogue Nation, the Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And here's a little tidbit. He basically invented previs. Yeah, get it. Get that. I'm the boy who could fly. Get it. Unbelievable. He's amazing. He is a production design god. Coming up, I'm also going to do an episode about the film Moxie, which I decorated. It comes out on March 3rd on Netflix, directed by Amy Poehler. It's a really special little film, and I hope you catch it. I will do a little picture pages with it where you could follow along with some sets, and so that's going to be fun. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Middle of winter got you down? Start your summer now with a Stogie Floaty luxury pool float. Float 'em if you got 'em. Available now on Etsy and stogiefloaty.com.
Welcome to Pro Tips for the Pros, brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads. In this series, we'll explore essential advice for professional contractors to deliver outstanding renovation results. Let's dive in. Before starting any renovation project, take the time to plan meticulously. Assess the customer's needs, budget, and timeline to ensure a smooth and successful renovation process. Thank you for joining us for this pro tip on planning thorough renovations. Stay tuned for more expert advice brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads.
A lot of people tolerate ordinary. Ordinary bathrooms, kitchens, entryways. Well, not on your watch. If you're a pro, you've got a new partner in town. Floor & Decor. From tile to wood to stone, Floor & Decor has more styles and job lot quantities of Schluter, Mapei, Laticrete, and other brands pros trust. Come see a whole new way to wow with Floor & Decor. Coming soon to Bailey's Crossroads.